Kumlan and Ablat Gemara. Today is the last day of Masechta Beya. We're making a siyum of Masechta Beya, and we're still discussing the laws of the Tchumin. Whose Tchum do we follow? So, Mi shahayu peirosav be'ira cheres. So let's say Reuven, his fruits were sitting in some other city, being minded by other people, and it's more than Tchum Yom Tov. So if you wanted to walk from that town to your town, you had to make an extension of your Tchum, which means Erev Tchumin. But the people of that other city made an Erev. Lahavi estimate peresav, and the purpose of that Erev that they made was so they could bring this person fruits on Yom Tov. Lo yavile, they cannot bring it to him because their Tchum is not what binds those fruits; it's the owner. But the Erev who peresav kamayu. But if he made who, but he made the Erev, since he is the owner, then peresav kamayu, the fruits are just like him, and they follow his Tchum. Mi shazimen etzloi nachim. If somebody invited guests to his house on Yom Tov proper, and these guests come from outside of the Tchum, and they made themselves an Erev in order to come and join you for Yom Tov Suda, and after the meal are leftovers, so you want to give them some leftovers to take back with them. Lo yalichem biyadam, they cannot take it back with them because this food belongs to the host, and therefore it's bound by the Tchum of the host, not by the Tchum of the guest, and they cannot do that unless he gave it to them before Yom Tov. But if he gave it on Yom Tov, even though it becomes theirs, it's only on Yom Tov. And you remember the whole discussion who owns the food on the table. But even if it belongs to the guest, nevertheless, it doesn't become theirs until Yom Tov proper. Is Ellen Kain Zikalem and the same Yom Tov? The only way that they can bring the food back with them is if he was mezakif to them. He took another person and says, "I want you to be acquire this on behalf of all my guests," and then and prior to Yom Tov, then it's bound up in the Tchum of the guest. Okay, so Idmar, we learned Hamafkid Peides Eitzachavedes. So Reuben gives his fruits to Shimon and asks Shimon to mind his fruits. So the question is, who sort of is in charge right now, and whose Tchum is binding on these fruits? Is it the Mafkid, the owner of the fruits, or is it the Nifkid, the one who's actually minding it? Rav says, Rav says you follow the one who's minding it. Shmuel says, Mafkid, you follow the one who owns the fruits. What's the base of their argument? Lema, let us say that Rav Shmuel, the other to Meir, Rav Shmuel are consistent with their view, which is what? Itnan, we learned in a Mishnah, im hechnis b'reshus. Let's say I have a cow, and Reuben has a cow, and goes to Shimon and says, Shimon, can I leave the cow with you? And Shimon says, bring it. Oil. So bring it. And the question is, how far does the responsibility of Shimon go? So he says, now we learn if you brought in the cow with into Shimon's property with permission, then balachotze chayiv. If the cow then causes damage, who is responsible? The shomer, the one who owns the chotze, because he said to the guy, bring it in, and what he meant was bring it in and I'll take care of it. So therefore, anything happens, it's his responsibility. However, Rebbe disagrees. Rebbe says, Rebbe says that no, just because he says bring it in doesn't mean I'm taking responsibility. It's still yours. It still belongs to the owner of the cow. So isn't that the same machlekes here? Oh, Rav Huna said, that whose responsibility is the chutzner, and therefore now a case as well. Rav says, whose tchum do we follow when it comes to these fruits? The owner of the house, the owner of the nifkid, not the owner, the nifkid, the one who's minding it. He's fully responsible. So therefore, it's his tchum. And Shmuel says halacha kerebi, that no, that by the cow, it's the owner of the cow is responsible. No, not the nifkid, not the one who's minding it. It's the same thing with the fruits. Whose tchum is it? The owner of the fruits. That's why Shmuel says keragle mafkid. Says Gemara, lav dafki could draw parallels. Lema, why can't we say the following? Why can't we say that the fact that two machlekes have nothing to do with each other? Rav can say that what I say over here, that when it comes to the fruits, we follow the tchum of the minder, of the nifkid, could even work out according to the Rabbanan said by the cow. It's the what do you call it? Even the Rabbanan say that the cow, the balachotz, is responsible. Rav, no, sorry, the Murphy says, let's say Rav follows the Rabbanon, that it's the Nifkid, or Shmuel says the Rebbe, that it's the Mafkid. Amloch Rav, no. Another Amri, I can work out to fill the Rebbe. Even according to the Rebbe, says that the minder is not responsible, but in the case of the fruits, it's his tchum that puts his stamp on it. Why? All he said was bring it in, bring it in. He never said bring it in and I'll take responsibility. He just said oil. So therefore, why should it be responsible? Over here, we're talking about a normal case of a mafkid and nifkid. The mafkid gave the fruits over to the nifkid, and the nifkid is responsible. He took it, then he took responsibility. So Rebbe agrees that in this case, the tchum is the nifkids. Shmuel will tell you that another amri afil rabban, even the rabban will say in the case of the cow, the nifkid says is responsible for the watch minding the cow. But when it comes to the fruits, it's the mafkid chum that puts a stamp on it. And why is that? Over there, the person who gave the cow to the chotzer and he brought it in, he is very happy. The Bala Chotzer should actually take over full responsibility. Because what happens if his cow is walking around in the courtyard and his own cow causes damage? He doesn't want to be responsible for his cow's damage, especially he's not there. If his own cow causes damage in the house of the minder, he doesn't want to be responsible. So he's very happy to give it over completely to the minder, and that's why we say that the minder is responsible. Over here, you think over here you think he wants that the fruits should be completely given over to the other person. When it comes to tchumen, he doesn't want the tchumen to be taken over by the minder. He wants tchumen to be according to him. So he has a possibility to go and pick it up. That's why, in this case of here, you follow the owner, not the minder. Okay, Tanan, it says in the Mishnah, in our Mishnah we just learned, it says he made who he has fruits in another town, but it says that if he made his own native tchumen, it follows his native tchumen. The payers follow him. Now the question is on Rab. But Rav just told us that when you give fruits to somebody else to mind, it's the minder that has the tchum. And now Mishnah clearly says all the way around. Our Mishnah says it's only the fruits that retains the power of the tchum. If you can tell me, it goes out to the minder. Is ke'edav hu mahava. So what if he made an edav? How does that help at all? So what? But he's not the balabos when it comes to tchum. Amar Rav Huna. Amri Beit Rav. Huna said the yeshiva of Rav to defend Rav. They say our case is not talking about where the fruits are in the other town and there are actual minders there who took responsibility. So the people in the other town said, "Look, we're not taking responsibility. You want to leave your fruits here? Here's a corner. Put it down there. It's your responsibility." That's why everyone agrees in this case. There's no transfer of responsibility. The tchumen remain with the owner, not with the minder. Okay, so Toshma, it says in our Mishnah, Misha's invited guest. They cannot take the presents home with them. Unless he was mazaka to them the food prior to Yom Tov. If you can tell them, so let's say he did give it to them before Yom Tov. But where is the food sitting right now? In the house of the host. So that means he is acting as a minder for them. And according to the Rab, it's the minder's tchum that takes care of that puts his post on it, the stamp on it. So what does it help that he's mezaka to them before Yom Tov? Since he's the minder, and according to Rav, it's the minder's tchum that overrides the other person's tchum. Says the Gemara, what helps if he's mezaka to somebody else? Answers the Gemara, here we're talking about over here we're talking about since he's a mezaka through somebody else, is why was he mezaka to them? Why did he before Yom Tov go out of his way and know the person in his whole elaborate scheme and give the food over to them before Yom Tov, so that if they want to go home, they can take it with them? And the only way that they can take it back with them is if he doesn't mind it for them, he doesn't take full responsibility. The only way is he says, "Look, I can leave the food by me, but I'm not taking responsibility." So that's exactly what he did. It's as if he put the food in the corner for them, but he's not minding it. So therefore, Rav will agree that the tchum follows the new owner that became the owner prior to Yom Tov. Or Iba Ema, or we can actually say that Zika shiny. In a case we went out of his way and he was mazaka them, the whole idea, what was he mazaka to them? In order to take away his chum. So even though he's minding it, not he's minding in every other sense, he's responsible for anything else, but because he's mazaka to them, what's he giving over to them? The right of the chum. One day he took the butchers came and he was staying in a hotel, and he put the meat right before Yom Tov out on the doorpost. because he came from another town and he put it on the doorpost so that he was going to make an Eid to be able to come to the town on Yom Tov to eat, and he did it right before Yom Tov. Also, the Kamei Rabunik, and so right now it's sitting in the hotel's house, and the question is, whose tchum does it follow? Does it follow Chanan Machaloi, who now owns the meat, but he went back home before Yom Tov and plans to come tomorrow again or not? Okay, Rabuna, what's it din? Amalei, if you're the one who put it on the doorway, then Zil Shkil, you have every right to go take it because you did it for yourself, and therefore you can go take it. But the Inu Talalach, but if they're the ones, the butchers are the ones who hung it, then Leitishko, you should not take it. We'll soon explain what happened there. Because he hung it on the doorpost. So what will help? But right now, who's minding it? The hotel. And according to the Rav, it's the minder that places his tchum, stamps his tchum on it. But Rav Huna, especially Rav Huna, he was a student of Rav. And Rav said, it depends who's minding it. So Gemara says, shiny avra the dasha. So Gemara says, it's different in this case where he put it on the doorpost, since where he himself placed it on the doorpost and they did not take responsibility. It's just like they said, put it in the corner, it's yours. We're not taking responsibility. It's as if they told him put it in the corner. And therefore it still belongs to the owner, which is Rav Chana, and that's why it's his tchum. So now we have three questions in the Gemara. First, Rav Hillel comes on Rav Ashi to understand. The inu tolele lo shakel, but if you tell me if the butchers would have hung it up, then it's their tchum, not this person's tchum. Why? But the butchers hung it up for him. Well, didn't Shmuel say we had it a few days ago? If let's say somebody fattens up animals and he didn't yet organize anything before Yom Tov, comes Yom Tov, anybody buys it, it follows their tchum. Why? Because the patam knew that somebody's going to buy it tomorrow, so they still had in mind whoever takes it, it becomes theirs. So surely in our case, where the butchers brought it here for Rab Chana, surely it's before Yom Tov, it's Rab Chana's, and therefore it should follow his tchum. Hare Karagli Kolad and follows all the buyers with had in mind. So surely in our case, it should belong to Rab Chana, even if the butchers placed it there. That's question number one. Question number two. Rabbi turned around to the Rashi as well, and he asked the following question: didn't he say the halacha? Like Abdeisa said, if there's only one shepherd in town, then it goes after that shepherd, because everyone knew that they're going to bring their sheep there. Even though they didn't, but they all knew it was going to happen. So surely in this case, they brought the meat for Rav Chana. Surely it's Rav Chana's meat. It should follow his tchum. Now Rav Ashi himself turned around and he asked, Rav Kana, this is not the same Rav Kana who's a Talmud of Rav. This is much later. So Rav Kana said, if they put it on the door, Rav Chana cannot take it. What now we learned, that an animal or the kalim, who's tchum they follow? The owners. Well, who's the owner here? Rav Chana. They just put it there for Rav Chana, but he paid for everything else. He's the owner. So we answer, shiny Rav Chana bar Chaneloi. Our Gemara has nothing to do with tchum. We're not talking about tchum. You misunderstood the story here. The story is Rav was very concerned about basar shenis alim and ayin. If you have a piece of meat and you don't have it's not sealed, we're scared that the guy swapped it. And the question is, here was hanging on the door, and is it a problem that if basar shenis alim and ayin or not? So we say like this: shiny Rav Chana bar Chaneloi is different. That what? The Gavra Rabbi, he was a great Talmud Chacham, a big tzaddik, who taught his b'shmaita. He was always learning. He didn't really notice what was happening around him. And the Hachi coming, and he asked, therefore, am I worried about basar shenis alim and ayin hanging out there in the doorway? If you're the one who put the meat there, then you held on to it, so you know what the meat looks like. Then you know exactly what it looks like. So you'll recognize it the next day. We're not worried about basar shenis alim and ayin because you'll recognize it straight away. Then go ahead and take it. But the iru tolach, if they put it on the door for you, not you, so you have no way of recognizing it, and you bechala, so so into your learning that you don't notice things around you anyway, and if you weren't even thinking about it, you forgot about it, then the masachta that you weren't thinking about this meat the whole time, and nobody's careful with your meat, not theirs. Letishko, don't take it at all, and that's what he means over here. Next Mishnah. Ein mashkin v'sheichetin on Yom Tov itself, you're not allowed to shecht an animal unless you prepared it before Yom Tov. So you cannot, and they used to, before they shechted an animal, they used to give it a drink to make it easier to strip the hide. Ein mashkin v'sheichetin with body is animals that are out in the field and you had no idea that was coming. You're not allowed to use it on Yom Tov. They pop into your area. You're not allowed to use it because it books. But you could check those animals that come at night back home. We'll see what bayos are. The domestic, the docile animals. Those animals you can check because as if you anticipate they will be there. Elu hein bayosses. What's the definition of bayosses? The field animals. Bayossa, the docile animals, the domestic animals. Halon is beer. They sleep over in town at nights. Midbodius and one of the field animals, halonas ba'afar. They sleep out in the fields, so they are mukt. Says the Gemara. First of all, what do you have to go into detail? Just say if you want to shachtanah. What he tells about giving to drink. Milsa agav urche kamashal. Come to teach you something by the way. The lashke inish behemte. A person should the best thing before you shecht is give the animal to drink, and then bahadad lishchet, and then you shecht. Why? Shem silche de mashche. Because then it's much easier to strip the hide, or according to the Rambam, some of the small lesions fall off. And by Chassidim, they say that before you go by a fabrengen, if you want to tell somebody off, learning properly or davening properly, so mashkin is a behemoth. First, you got to get the nefesh abam is happy, you give them a little mashkin to drink, and then b'shechin, then you go in and you start doing what you have to do, remove all these lesions and things which are not proper. Talk about learned. Elu hein midbari mayos. Actually, machlekes in the brayse, the definition of midbaris mayos, not like our Mishnah. Midbaris koshi yoyses bepesach. They leave your home in Pesach summertime. V'royes ba'afar. They're out there in the pastures the entire summer. V'nichnosses b'levidishay. They come back Tishrei time. In other words, they come back when it's cold. For 6 months, they're out there out in the fields. The eluhein bayos. What's a bayos? Is midbaris. Bayoses are domestic animals, and where are we? Sorry, I just skipped it. What's bayasas? They go outside of the city environs during the day. But every night they come back home. That's the definition of a domestic animal. They have to come back home every single night. However, Rebbe says no. Bayasas, even those that come back in the winter, they're still domestic animals. Why else are they coming back? What's considered bodies? They go out in the fields to graze. But they never come back. They don't have a home. They're out there wandering. That's the definition of a wild animal. They never come home. But we're talking about here, and therefore what? And therefore on Yom Tov you cannot shecht, which means it's muktzah. Now remember, we have an argument. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, there's muktzah. Rabbi Yehuda says there's muktzah. Rabbi Shimon says there isn't. And now we know Rebbe follows Rabbi Shimon. So what's Rebbe saying here? Rebbe believes in the concept of muktzah, and he's tell us what's considered a domestic animal, what's not a domestic animal. What's the difference? Even a non-domestic animal, according to Rebbe, you can shech on Yom Tov if you happen to come across it. But boy, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Shimon, the son of Rebbe, asked Rebbe. We know that Shimon, who doesn't believe in muktzah, concedes there are certain muktzahs that are so removed from your mind. And one of them was we had raisins and dried figs where it was ready to be eaten. You decided, no, I want to dry it. And while it's in the drying process, they're not edible. So they became completely muktzah from your mind. You're not going to change your mind. And therefore, Rav Shimon agrees to that. So he asked the following question. What about patzile tomato? What about dates that were never ripe yet? Not that they were ripe and then you rejected it. It was never ripe and you decide, you know what? I'm going to let these things dry and eat them dry. So would Rav Shimon concede that this is also muktzah because you're waiting for it to dry? Or will he say because it was never ripe in the first place, it's different than raisins, than grapes, which were ready to be eaten, and then you decide, oh, I am not going to eat it, which means you deliberately removed it from your mind. Maybe only that case is muktzah. Amalei said, a muktzah Rav Shimon will not concede muktzah ela gregeres v'tzimukim bavad. Only in the case of gregeres, dried figs and raisins, only there. Why? Because since they were suitable to be eaten and you decided not to, and you placed it somewhere to dry, so therefore you removed it from your mind. But in these cases here, you never pushed it out of your mind. It was never ripe in the first place. And there are some people who will eat it that's the way it is. So maybe in this case, it's not muktzah. But what do we see from here? What do we see from here, Lepoil? That Rebbe, who's buying into this question, means he also believes he follows Reb Shimon, which is he doesn't believe in muktzah. If he follows Reb Shimon and he doesn't believe in muktzah, so then what in the world is this whole issue about? Whether you can eat whether the animal is domestic or non-domestic, it makes absolutely no difference. You can always shecht animals. Says Gemara, I can answer you. Looking on me, I can tell you that this case over here is that midbarius are just like, because they never come home, according to Rebbe, You never, it's completely removed from your mind. It's no different in the case of the raisins that are completely removed from your mind. These animals are also completely removed from your mind. So therefore, even according to Reb Shimon, non-domestic animals are muktzah and you cannot shech on Yom Tov. That's answer number one. Ibai say more can answer you. Ledivreim the Rabbanan Kamalu. He's talking. Sorry, Ibai saying answer you. Ledvar Reb Shimon Kamalu. He's saying, look, I personally hold of muktzah. That's why I'm going to discuss with you what's considered domestic animal, what's not. But the Leila Shidle, Reb Shimon doesn't. And I don't hold like Reb Shimon. But you want to know according to Reb Shimon, I'll give you an answer. But not that that's my opinion. Just because we're discussing Reb Shimon doesn't mean that I have to rule like him. That's answer number two. And answer number three is that he does hold Reb Shimon. There's no muktzah, but he's telling the rabbis, you who believe in muktzah, but I still believe your definition is wrong. According to me, I say a muktzah. I hold like Reb Shimon. There's no muktzah at all. According to you, admit to me, that we're those animals that leave on Pesach and come back in the winter, they come back in the winter, even you should treat them like domestic animals and they shouldn't be muktzah. Because in the back of your mind, you always, they never go too far away, you're always thinking about them, that on Yom Tov they pop up, I might use it. The Rabban disagree. They say, like, we treat them as bodies, and they leave in Pesach and they come back in the winter. During the summer, they're completely removed from your mind, and therefore they are muktzah. Hadnalach Meshilin Peidas Slika Masechta Beya. This ends Masechta Beya, and tomorrow we start Masechta Shana. And